Good evening and welcome to tonight's Lockdown Learning. My name is Bren Carlo and I am the Director of Public Affairs at the Zionist Federation of Australia. Tonight it is my great pleasure to have as our guest Rav Benny Lau. Before I introduce him, I want to ask you to put aside an hour for this time next Wednesday night. To mark the 20th anniversary of the beginning of the Second Intifada, we will be speaking with Arnold Roth. Arnold is an Australian Israeli whose daughter Malki was murdered in a Palestinian suicide attack in 2001. We will be speaking to Arnold about his personal journey and about how he has both honoured Malka's memory as well as tried to bring to justice one of her murderers. But we'll also be speaking to Arnold about the ramifications of the Second Intifada on Israel and Israeli society. That's next Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Now, some of you might remember Benny from his visit to Australia in 2012 to speak at the ZFA Educators Conference. As we wrote in the email that we sent out today, Benny is a peacemaker. He has made strong interventions regarding discrimination in Israeli society and seeks to mend the secular religious divide. But it's not just statements. Benny is nearing the end of a 40-day journey across Israel. He has visited cities and towns and met with all sectors of Israeli societies in a group consisting of all sectors of Israeli society. Benny is the head of the Human Rights and Judaism in Action project at the Israel Democracy Institute. He also heads the team behind 929, which is an Israeli social initiative aimed at creating discourse amongst all sectors of society based on the revival and relevance of the 929 chapters of the Tanakh. Speaking tonight with Benny is the president of the ZFA, Jeremy Leibler. So without further ado, Jeremy.
Thanks, Bren. And Rav Lau, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We would have loved to have you in person again. I was just saying, for those that weren't online, that Rav Lau was in Australia, I think it was in 2012, for the ZFA Educators Conference, but you also spoke at the 50th anniversary of Yavneh College, and I vividly recall your speech on that night. So I'm looking forward to a discussion with you tonight, and we will take questions from the audience as well.
Thank you.
So Rav, I think we'll start, you've done an enormous amount of work trying to heal some of the divisions within Israeli society. And it sort of feels like those divisions are becoming more stark as time goes by. And I'm not just talking about, sort of the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts and security issues, but I'm talking about divisions between, the rich and the poor and Ashkenazim and Sephardim and so on and so on. Do you think that those divisions are or the increasing divisions are sort of a microcosm of what's happening around the rest of the world? Because we see it with politics, we see it in the United States, we're seeing it in Australia. Or is this something more unique that's to do with the challenges facing the Jewish people?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me, Jeremy. It's just a sweet memories from 8 years ago, and I cannot wait to what should I say? The world should open and we can, invite each other to Yerushalayim and Melbourne and Sydney. Just hope that, the Israeli song, Bashana Ba'a Nesheva Lamirpeset, it's a beautiful song that's talking about Od tir'eh, kama tov yeh bashana ba'a. It's a very optimist poem, and I want to say, let's hope that next Chagim will be much, much different in many aspects. So let's hope together. Now, it's funny to say that, all generations spoke about the return back to Zion. We are talking about the idea of Shir HaMa'alot, Beshuv Hashem et Shivat Zion, Hayinu Kechumim. When Hashem will bring the Jewish people back homeland, that will be a miracle. So here we are, the Jewish people return back. You are in the Zionist movement in Australia, you are so strong. And thanks God, it's happened. When you read all the prophets, all of them talking about the redemption, talking about Geulah days, all of them spoke about what? About physically what we are really feel and touch in Israel today. But, they didn't talk just about return physically home. they talked about what will happen there. And now we are all the Jewish people, like in exactly what you said, it's like a microcosmos, but the conflicts, unbelievable. It's like a feeling of someone go to my space and push me strongly because he needs a bit more, and we need to learn that we are pieces to understand the whole, to understand how we create a new society. The Tzionut built the first level, I should say, the platform. But now we are talking about the second, we are talking about the whole. And it's very hard, I should say, it's very hard because I'm going around and I can share it with you, with all the people, share the feelings, how it's feel to go to a corners, to a places with the conflicts and listen to the people. May I share it with you, Jeremy?
Please.
I will. Okay. I should say it like that. We have, funny to say, but in Israel we have a Memshelet Achdut, a unit,
United front.
we have no word for that because it's a joke. It's a joke. It's something that Netanyahu used all the needs, and in the solution of that government, they wrote that they will build a special cabinet to make peace inside the country. Now, who with who? Who with who? Benny Gantz with Benny Netanyahu. It's funny. It's funny. It's scaring. It's making, if you think seriously about that, it's tears in the eyes about the situation. So in Tisha B'Av, mean 6 weeks from now, back, I found myself talking with one of the brilliant people in Israel, used to be in the Supreme Court, Eliakim Rubinstein, is a judge, very well known in Israel. And I said to him, we cannot wait until the prime minister or the other prime minister will do something. It's our responsibility as citizens. And we, both of us, can do that. We collected a well-known parliament member in the past from the Labour, Ayelet Nachmias. She's very, very with a motion to make peace in Israel. And together, we started a path. It's like a journey. We called it Masa le'emek hashaveh. The word emek hashaveh, we took it from the Bible when Abraham make his journey, go to a valley of equal. That the translation of emek shaveh, it's the valley of equal. And the idea was, I said, I want to listen to the people in the conflict areas, but I don't want to argue. I don't want to do debating. I just want to ask in every place 2 questions. One, I ask, what is your dream? And the second, what is your fear? And we started, the first station in this journey was Rosh Chodesh Elul in Hebron, the Jewish community in Hebron. Now, I'm not sure, Jeremy, if the whole audience understand what mean going, the first station, going to Hebron, because the team that I brought collected the whole pieces in Eretz Israel. I took Arabs from the Galil. I took a very left-wingers from Tel Aviv. I took pieces of people. According to the Corona situation, we couldn't be more than 20 people, but many, many pieces. And we found ourselves in Me'arat HaMachpelah, Rosh Chodesh Elul. I mean, it's just about 35 days from now. Me'arat HaMachpelah, to the memory of the Israelis, of the Jewish people around, take you well to, Jeremy. If I'm taking, we didn't prepare our conversation, so it's very spontaneous. If I ask you, Jeremy, מערת המכפלה, Hebron, the Jewish community in Hebron. What is your reaction?
Honestly,
Honestly, of course.
I think of
It's
two
just
things.
it's just between you and me.
No, it's a good question. And I suppose the honest answer is I think of extremism. It's one of the things that pops into my head. And then I think back to my own experiences in Hebron, and that's quite different. So there's the time I've spent over the years. When I've been in Israel, I've visited Hebron several times. The first time I visited was probably 15 years old on a visit with my father, and we went together, just the two of us, and it was a very special visit. And it was actually just after. It would be 25 years ago. So it was just after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. And so the atmosphere in the country at the time was still very tense, particularly for anyone walking around in a kippah. You could feel it. So I remember the contrast, and I also remember that the people that I met were very different to what I'd expected. In other words, they were very ordinary people, normal, lovely individuals, and it wasn't the image. But over the time, the only experience I have with Hebron really in recent years is what I see in the press and the association of a very small group of Jews living surrounded by hundreds of thousands of Arabs in a very tense environment.
Exactly. So first of all, thank you, because this is the most important thing when we are talking about this journey. We came and said, we will not be the judges. We will not put ourselves in a position of point to the other. We will ask. We want to see them, to hear the voice. So the heads of this Jewish community in Hebron, of course, they was very happy that we came and invited us. And first of all, the numbers. I didn't know that we have about 1,000 citizens, Jewish citizens in Hebron, and about 200,000 Arabs I'm talking without Kiryat Arba, just about the small community, include 300 boys in yeshiva that they are not citizens. This is the numbers. It's about 2.5% of the town. Nothing at all. Okay. Secondly, if I ask them, what is your fear? I will, in a second, I will say something about the dream. But if I ask Orit Struk, extremely, in the map of the politician in Israel, you have the middle, you have the right, and then you have extremely right, and then extremely right, and then you have Orit Struk. She invited us. Between her and me, we never talked before. I'm in the other side. Okay, we have no connection between. So when she said about fear, said, if someone happened here, something happened here in Hebron to the Jewish people, in Tel Aviv, it's nothing. For them, we are not a human being. For them, we are mitnachalim. We are in the settlements. And it's hard to me. It's a fear. She said, I want people to know that we are, as you say, we are anashim regilim, ordinary people. We are regular people. We have families. We have everything that you have. We are the same. And then when I asked her about dream, so she took out her kacha, she have here a sign of Har HaBayit, okay, the temple in Har HaBayit, and she said, this is my dream. So it was caring. I said to her, please, Orit, please, can you share with us a smaller dream? Because this is too far. Can we have a small? And then she said something very interesting. She understood my reaction. And she said, you know what? I will keep my dream to myself. But if you want a smaller dream, I will say that here we are 1,000 Jews in Hebron. In 1929, what we call in Hebrew tarpat. The numbers was much, much more, and the mixing between the Arabs and Jews was fantastic.
Yeah.
Until the time summer 29 was a terror act, terrible, a pogrom against the Jewish in Hebron, and actually we should say the Jewish community completely, it was Churban. It was all Yeshuv Yehudi in Hebron destroyed in that day. So she said, I want to return to that point before 29. For her, the blood in 29 is on the front of her face. And then someone in the left side of our group asked her, do you remember not just 29, but do you remember the blood of 94? Now, 94, it's the blood of Baruch Goldstein,
yeah,
who killed so many Arabs who prayed in the Me'ara. So I said, between this blood and this blood, you try to make something that let us live. Week later, the same group, we found ourselves in Nazareth, the Arab town. And they invited us, and exactly the same two questions. What is your dream? And what is your pain? What you are dreaming? And week later, we found ourselves in Bnei Brak with the Meyer. Week later in Sderot, in all the conflict between the periphery and the Israel, you know, the first Israel, the second Israel. And now we close the terms. So the next step will be by Zoom, that we are taking one of the big conflicts in Israel, but not physically. You know, it's like a very strong argument between the courts and the Knesset, the parliament. I sure that it's never happened in Australia. I sure. All the concept can be happening, but think about that instead working together, the parliament with the laws and the court by, you know, caring and keeping that it's all, you know, all happen well. It's a crash. It's a terrible accident between the Supreme Court and the parliament. So we will do a meeting between that and that in Zoom next week. So this is the idea of this journey. And I'm feel that it's a responsibility to see, to feel, to hear, to be part of all voices. This is a part of my tafkidim.
Look, that's amazing, and it's inspiring, and it's nice to hear of those sort of grassroots, because, you know, attempts to sort of communicate with each other, because too often what we see on a larger scale is just this further division. And so let me ask you a bit more of a specific question. I think this is something that a lot of people, it's personal to me, but I think a lot of people have this sort of struggle. Today, the world feels like it's divided into, you know, boxes. You either have to decide you're over here or you're over here. And there's very little room, or it feels very lonely if you're in the middle. And, you know, Tehillah Friedman gave a beautiful speech in the Knesset, and she talked about sort of radical centrism. But what I want to ask you is more specifically, in the United States, less so in Australia, but in the United States, as they approach the election this year, where you have a situation where the vast majority of American Jews vote Democrats and are very opposed to Trump, to the point that many on the left, as soon as the word Trump is mentioned, you know, sort of cannot even look or engage in a conversation. And likewise on the right, it's this sort of, you know, it's our way or no other way, and we have to buy into the entire narrative. But for many Jews who look at some of the practical steps that Trump has taken in terms of Israel, you know, recognizing Jerusalem, the role played in terms of the peace agreements now with the UAE and Bahrain, and they look at these things and they say, wow, you know, that's something amazing for the Jewish people. Yet many also look at Trump, and particularly through the prism of traditional Jewish values and think, there's just something that makes me feel very uncomfortable with, the values that are sort of reflective of the way in which he behaves and operates and frankly treats people. How does a Jew, and I'm not suggesting that Jews should all have the same political opinions, God forbid, but how should a Jew that places the well-being of Israel, whether or not it's a Jew in Israel or a Jew in the diaspora, but places the well-being and the safety of Israel and the Jewish people up here, how do they sort of rationalize this inconsistency?
First of all, it's excellent. It's not a question, actually. It's a declaration, and because it's not a question mark in the end of that sentence. And I agree with you, but I want to say that when I started talking about the feeling of Shivat Zion, return back to Zion, and I believe that you and me share together, and all the people who hear now us, I believe that something in the last, it's not decades, it's about the 100 years, the last 100 years in the Zionist movement, all the time that we are sharing together the history, we can touch, we can feel that something happened. Something happened. Now, we know that little happened because the people, most of the thing happened because the process and the history, because if you are a believer, so you believe that Hashem make it, never mind, but it's happened. Things happened and it's on the way. And I want to say that sometimes Hashem sends shlichim, messengers that you cannot believe. So it's so how you give to this person the zchut, the right to bring that Yeshua. And the truth is that it's happened very often. It can be in a little pieces examples and it can be huge examples. So Behemet, if I'm looking to the background of President of America, Trump, and I think, wow, can I give him aliyah in Bet Knesset? I think that his record is terrible without saying if I'm right or left. Just human being. You cannot accept everything that he did before. Happened so, he became the president. Happened so, he declared about the ambassador, the embassy in Jerusalem. Happened so, he brought the Arabs to break the embargo and to make peace. Happened so. How you work in your word, who is your messenger? And I laugh, but it's true. It's true all over the history, Jeremy. I'm learned a lot history. I'm learned from the Bible, from the sages, from the whole days. And I see so many messengers that you don't want to host at home, but they make the history.
That's
so
true.
Here we are.
That's true. That's very true indeed. Rabbi, I want to move on and sort of touch on a couple of really important issues. And you've been very outspoken on many issues, but in particular, there was in 2015, you gave a speech to a rally after a weekend in Israel where we had, a horrific stabbing of a woman at the Jerusalem Gay Pride Parade. And at that same weekend was the weekend when a Jewish terrorist burnt a Palestinian family while they were asleep, set fire to the house. A toddler died. The parents died sometimes later. And I get shivers when I talk about it. And I watched your speech several times today as well. And it was so incredibly powerful. And before I want to ask you some specific questions about that, but if we're able to do it, I think we've got it here. I'd like to just play, just for everyone that may not have seen it, that short clip. Bren, if you're able to play that clip now, let's see if we can get it working. That would be great.
ועמדו זקני העיר וענו ואמרו, ידינו שפכו את הדם הזה. אי אפשר לומר ידינו לא שפכו את הדם הזה. כל מי שישב אי פעם בשולחן שבת או בכיתת בית ספר או בבית כנסת או במגרש כדורגל או במועדון או במתנ"ס ושמע את הבדיחות הגזעניות, שמע את הבדיחות ההומופוביות, שמע את הגסות של המילים ולא קם ועצר, הוא שותף לשפיכת הדם הזו.
And for those that want to watch the whole speech, I encourage you to do it afterwards. We'll put a link to the speech on our Facebook page because it really was an incredibly powerful speech. And you touch on a couple of themes. You know, you make the point that we all have a responsibility to speak up. And I often feel that too often today, the sort of silent majority, the consensus in the middle, they're too quiet. But I want to ask you something, and I want to first focus in on the issues that flow from the stabbing at the Pride Parade in Jerusalem. The whole issue of homosexuality, LGBTQ and inclusion within the Orthodox world is a very challenging issue. It's an issue, you know, all Jewish communities all around the world face. And we've seen a lot of, you know, not enough and too slow, but we have seen some green shoots, I think, over the past few years. We saw recently Chief Rabbi Ephraim Mervis in the UK release a policy for day schools in terms of dealing and inclusion for students dealing with these with gender issues or whatever it is. And at the same time, you know, more recently, I saw that at Yeshiva University, they actually refused to have a you know, LGBTQ sort of club establish themselves within Yeshiva University. So what I want to ask you is, do you feel, is this something that over time, put aside the sort of ultra-Orthodox world, but the modern Orthodox world, is this an issue that you feel the modern Orthodox world will be able to grapple with in such a way that these you know, very important and valued members of our community are made to feel that they are valued and that they are equal and that they are a part and they should participate and they should come to our Batei Knesset and they should, you know, attend our Jewish day schools and that they should feel that, you know, they are as welcome as anybody else in the Jewish community? Where are we headed as a community?
First of all, I want to say that we are in a long, long process. It's still in the middle. I remember very, very clear, about 25 years ago, 25 years ago, maybe more, that my young brother, actually, it didn't come from him, but it came from my mother. In that time, 25 years ago, think about me, in less 25 years, I was a young rabbi in North Israel, in Kibbutz Saad. And some of the Australians know Kibbutz Saad.
Yes, absolutely.
That time I was with, of course, my wife and maybe 3 or 4 children. And, you know, a regular rabbi, Zioni Dati, Kibbutz Dati, very regular. And then I got a phone call from Ima from Jerusalem. I need to talk with you. Okay? When Ima said to you, Ima, I need to talk with you immediately, you go to Jerusalem. It's a long way. And I thought that something happened by you know, something happened in between her, maybe something with health, or I didn't know. She cried in the kitchen. I can't forget that. She cried in the kitchen and shared with me that my brother, young brother, in that time he was about 25 or something like that, he told her that he is homosexual. Now, for me, in that time, it was like, the roof fell down.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe, because the idea of knowing personally, individually, someone that he is homosexual, it can't be. It's something that my brother become mad. I was very, very, I should say, very strict and closed. I returned back to my kibbutz and I said, it's not my business. I didn't have language. I mean in culturally. I didn't know what to say, what to do. So it was like a secret between me and my wife. We didn't share it with anyone. My brother, thanks God that my mother was in the right place. She hugged him, she kept him. In the end, he left Israel. He left Israel because Israel in that time was a very, very, I should say, tradition with the old beliefs about homosexual business. He left Israel. Now he's a rabbi in Manhattan. He's a very, very, he's a real spiritual leader. He's in very open liberal community. Lab Shul is the name of his community. And first of all, he's a mensch. But more than that, he found two women lesbian, and with them, he built like a new family.
Wow.
You can see in my mother, in my mother corner of all the grandchildren pictures, you can see 3 kids of my brother that he gave, it's like bracha in the world. So first of all, I by myself, I found myself in a long way of 25 years. And since then until now, it's so, I can share with you a phone call that I got this morning, today, morning phone call from a man. He's about 45 years old. 20 years ago, 23 years ago, I was Shaliach in London. I was Bnei Akiva Shaliach in London. And one of the Rashei Sviva, in London, Bnei Akiva work with the name of Svivot.
Yeah.
So so one of the Rashei Svivot came to me and said to me that he is a homosexual. Now, I was already 2 years later after my brother told me, so it wasn't new for me. And I kept him in Bnei Akiva. Now, the hard step there in London was to explain to his parents the situation. His mother was with a very traditional Sephardi background. She came from Morocco. She's very strong tradition. And for her, son, homosexual, it's like someone who died. She couldn't accept that. Mamash, in contrast to my mother, she was terrible. But again, a process. I spoke with her for hours, and then to her husband, and then le'at. So this phone call this morning, I got from Alex, this boy, who 23 years ago told me that he is homosexual, said Ima passed away. Ima passed away, and he wanted to tell me that they Mamash, the last conversation, they're in peace. She collected his boys. He have a partner, and they adopted boys, and it's like her grandchildren. So she passed from the way with peace with him. I can, Jerry, believe me, I can collect pieces of stories like that. It's all about watching eyes. What we are doing now, we are watching eyes. Without that, nothing will happen. The enemy of all that story that I'm sharing with you is the refusing of listening and see. The refusing of understand that we are stories. We are not just ideas. We are alive stories. You know, I share with you another small story. I don't know how many time we have.
Please.
Okay, so it's a funny story, but not just funny. Okay, you know, in summer in Israel, in July, always before Tisha B'Av, there are a very special week in Yeshivat Har Etzion, in Gush Etzion. They do a festival of learning Tanakh. It's a whole week. It's unbelievable. 1,000 people came just to learning Tanakh together for 5 days, the week before Tisha B'Av. It's unbelievable. It's really exciting. Hopefully, you can come next week, next year. So 2 years ago, summer, or year and a bit more ago, I got a phone call from one of the leaders of that organization, of the week of learning. It's like, you know, it's maybe similar to Limud, kind of something like that. It's a festival of learning. But all Tanakh and all religious Orthodox, all. And so I got a phone call from one of the rabbis who lead that program, and he said to me, I'm friend with him for 40 years. And he said to me, Benny, I want you to know that I invited a special meeting of the leaders of that Yemei Iyun, this special program, a special meeting today I invited to say that you will not come this year to teach in this Yemei Iyun. For years I'm teaching there. And he said, I called them to throw you out from the teachers of Yemei Iyun. And he said, the whole group was against me, so we will invite you, but I call you now just to let you know that I tried to throw you. It's a shiganek.
And what was his reason?
Now, what the reason? Someone showed him a picture in the internet, in Ynet, that it was week before, that he saw Benny Lau in a wedding of 2 boys in a homosexual wedding. So I didn't make the chuppah, but I came to the chuppah and I hugged one of the, Khatan, and someone in Wire took a picture, and a few minutes later it was on media. Okay. So because that picture, this rabbi tried to stop me teaching his Yemei Iyun because it's not legitimate. I did something so wrong. So he tried to punish me and say, you will not teach. But the whole team, he accepted me. So now, he phoned me because he wanted to be honest, to be true with me, he's a good friend. Then I asked this rabbi, may I share with you the story of this Khatan? And then he screamed on me. He said, I don't want to hear your story because always you have stories. I want to keep my ideology. I want to keep the family values. I don't want your story. And I said to him, you phoned me, so now you will hear my story. And the story that this boy, this Khatan, I know him from 10 years. When he found himself as a homosexual, his parents, all his rabbis all around, took him to do the process, what we call tipulei hamara, mean trying physically and psychologically.
Conversion therapy in English, yeah.
Now he tried twice, Jeremy.
And it's been outlawed now. It's illegal, both in Israel and Australia. Yeah.
Exactly. 2 times he tried to suicide. And because I knew him, I helped him a lot. In the end, I collected him to work with me. Then he came to tell me that he found a partner. I said to him, and I'm very excited to tell you, I said to him, if you found partner mean that you decided to be alive. Because if not, you will be lonely. And because you decided to be alive, I want to hug you and to come to your wedding. So I said to this rabbi, do you think that I did mitzvah or avera? What a shame. I think, I don't care about you. I ask you, what do you think Hashem think about my act? And I can stand strongly and say we about your question, Jeremy, about the Jewish, the religious society. We are in a long process and we need to listen to see the faces. And thanks God, from 25 years ago when my brother brought me to understand we are in a completely different place, but still a long way to do.
You know, we could talk about this for hours. We could talk about this for hours, and you know, they are some really amazing stories, and clearly there is a lot of work to do. But I think for many people, hearing people like you share these stories is incredibly important. So thank you, and I hope you sort of continue with this very important work. I want to just move on to a sort of, it's a different subject, but it's frankly, it's the same principle, it's the same theme. You also were most recently, very openly criticized the sort of coalition when Beit Yehudi, Jewish Home, announced before the last election that they were going to merge with Otzma. And just for those not aware, Otzma is a very extreme right-wing, I think it's probably fair to describe them as racist party, you know, really based on the sort of teachings of Meir Kahane, whose party was banned from the Knesset many decades ago. And, you know, you came out very strongly. You said, I think, a vote for Otzma is like voting for the Nuremberg laws, which is, you know, bringing up those analogies is a very serious allegation. I don't want to so much talk about Otzma because I think we understand where that's gone. But what I want to ask you is, you know, Beit Yehudi, I suppose, if we really trace back to Mavdal, you know, the origins, if there is a party, this is the party of religious Zionists in Israel. What does this say about the state of religious Zionism today that Beit Yehudi were prepared to, even if they were kicking and screaming, but they ultimately were prepared to form this alliance?
The good news is that religious Zionists today are split all over the parties in Israel. This is a good news. If you mentioned before Tehila Friedman, she is not in a religious party, but she's so serious and religious. And I can, you know, we can count many members in the parliament in very, very different parties from left and right. So this is the good news. Truly, Beit Yehudi originally was the Beit of the religious Zionists. So, I should say openly, something terrible happened to the religious Zionists officially, to the party and all around. And the main trouble is that they don't understand the price that we paid because that. It's specific going about understanding what is responsibility of be a Medina state. The machshava, the mind of some of them is like a sector who care about the sector. Now we know the Haredi parties always, and it's always was and it will be, because that is the hashkafa, the belief of that parties. We want to keep our people. Our people mean very intimate, very close, and we don't care about the needs of all. The whole concept of religious Zionists historically is to be in the main roads. We don't want to be in the corner. We don't want to be the alternative. We want to be in the place that you take responsibility. Now, responsibility is also about thoughts and beliefs. It's not just about acts. When we teach our students in yeshivot, in ulpenot, all over about Am Yisrael, okay, what is our concept of to be a Jew? And to be a Jew in a Jewish state, and it's a democracy state, where when you ask, מה זה להיות יהודי? If you teach this student that to be Yehudi, it's elite, and the minorities are secondary, you do something terrible, not just to the mind of your student, but in the end, you will find them do terrible things to the minorities. I believe, I'm a student of Rav Amital, I student of all the old leaders of Tzionut Datit, that in the hashkafa of Torah, if I take seriously the Torah and try to build a concept how the state should behave to the minorities according to the Jewish values, it's clear for me, equal. Minorities should feel at home in my state. And if I make them feel secondary, I do something wrong, not just for them. I do something wrong for the Torah, for the Jewish people. And the Torah becomes something terrible. Think about that people who believe by the liberal values, by equal, by humanistic, think that Torah is chauvinist. Think about the Torah that it's taking us extremely to the nationalism without any responsibility to other people. How can it be? This is a tragedy, not just for the people. For me, for my belief, it's a tragedy for the Torah. And as a rabbi, I fight because that. I need to do many acts that bring the light of Torah with the light of human being to all over. This is one of the main things that I feel responsibility to all over about human rights from the Torah. It's not in addition, it's not in conversion, it's just that. This is the Torah. And I feel that the Tzionut Datit should go, mamash, if we are talking in Aseret Yemei Tshuva, the days before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, this is something that as the concept of religious Zionist, we need to do a big tshuva to understand the values, the basic values.
Yeah, and we talked earlier about the importance of not remaining silent, and I think, perhaps, I agree with you that there are many within the religious Zionist sort of world in Israel who, it's diverse, and there is of course a diversity of opinion, but maybe where the failure sits is with our leadership, because there aren't enough. And there are a lot of many good rabbanim and good leaders within the religious Zionist world, but they are not brave enough, or maybe fear of repercussions, to actually speak up and say some of these things. And I fear that until they do, we are losing a generation of younger people that feel completely disconnected from that worldview. And we're losing them, and they're not generally going to the right. They're sort of drifting away. And maybe that's a good entree to another subject that we've got a little bit more time, and I want an opportunity. I've got a few questions here to ask you that the audience has asked, but just maybe briefly in 5 minutes. And I think you spoke about this actually many years ago when you were in Australia at the Educators Conference. You've done a lot of work around how to keep our children connected to their Judaism, to Israel. Do you want to just talk a little bit about your your views on that, and what we're doing perhaps wrong, not just in Israel, but everywhere in the world, educational institutions? Because I think one thing we have in common everywhere in the diaspora, and probably in Israel too, is that we are finding it harder and harder to keep our children connected and inspired, by Torah and by Jewish values, and we're losing many of them.
So we have very little time to share because it's a so serious question. It's very serious. Actually, it's touched everyone here and around the world.
Yeah.
And I know that. I know, and when you see your kid decide to go to a different path, to a different way of life, it's always hard. It's a question you ask yourself, Ma city, what I did wrong. And I want to say very, very pashut, very simply, but need to talk a lot about that. I believe, as you heard already, about narratives, about very, very intimate and individual stories. And when I'm talking about follow steps of the past, I think that each one have responsibility to connect his kids, his grandchildren, to his own grandparents. It's a very individual story. Never mind where they came from Hungary, from Poland, if I'm between Sydney and Melbourne, but all over the world, if you had a chance to connect your kids or your grandchildren to your grandparents, that makes the difference. I can tell you, we have no time for that, maybe next conversation, but here is a picture of my grandfather who killed in Treblinka in 42. Now, of course, I didn't know him, but he is here. It's in my desk, and I can tell you openly, and I just will share it, but without talking about that. When I was 16 years old, I thought that I will leave all the Dati area. I was young, I was a chutzpahdiker, and I thought that I will leave everything because something. Between Kita Yud and Yud Aleph, someone who knew my grandfather came to me and talked about him. And that night that I heard first time about my grandfather, make me return back to the path. This is my own story. And I believe that it's one of the very intimate and simple way to make the kesher. It's a private and individual stories who make the connection. It's not philosophy of Judaism. It's very, very simple and private.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Rabbi. And I hope we'll have and we'll certainly find opportunities to continue these discussions. If you've got a few minutes, I've got a couple of questions here from the audience that have sent through. One is in relation to the earlier subject that we spoke about, and you talked about the wedding of the gay couple. And the question, I think I'm just trying to sort of, because I've got a few on the same topic, I'll put it into one. I suppose in essence, the question is, it was a beautiful story, but do you think there will be a day where a couple like that will be able to get married under a chuppah by an Orthodox rabbi? Do you think that day will come?
I'm not, I'm very, very simple person, and I have no vision far away. As I see the picture today, the answer is no. The answer is no, because the concept of wedding in the religious world, never mind what kind of religious, but the concept is kedusha. And when you try to understand the holy of the wedding, you're always talking about the idea of the Bible that ish ve'isha, the couple who make the Shekhinah between, it's something very deep, very pure, and I cannot see in the coming years that will be broken to make a chuppah kedat Moshe v'Yisrael, mean a religious wedding. What I do see, but not just see, but I act for, that according to the law, it will be legitimate to have a status of what I called a covenant of marriage, mean Brit Nisuin, covenant of marriage. It's not chuppah v'kiddushin. It's not religious, but it's officially. And I think that by that, the whole community will accept that. It's something a bit different, but so far, it's more than nothing.
Thank you. And just, I think we've probably got time just for one very final question. Siri. The question relates to the relationship between Australia and, well, not Australia, the diaspora and Israel, and some of the challenges that we're seeing, particularly in the United States, but we see similar issues, less so in Australia, but particularly in the United States, just the further distancing, the disconnection between American Jewry in particular and Israel. And what do you think in the diaspora? Forget in Israel for a minute, because you're talking to the diaspora here. What do you think we can do in the diaspora to shift this trend where younger people in particular are feeling increasingly disconnected?
It's a very hard question, because we need to learn why. And the why coming to a point, especially to the majority in states who are, as you said before, were coming more democracy, more left side, and many of them in the reform world and not in the Orthodox world, because the connection between the rights and the Orthodox are very, very warm. But when you are talking about the place, you know, Medinat Israel, State of Israel, tried to be the home for all Jewish people. But if they locked the home and said, this room is not for you, I'm talking especially about the Kotel, you know, it's not legitimate to close the Kotel to the reform. It's something, it can't happen. It can't happen. We, as a Jewish people, I'm as an Orthodox rabbi, we need to fight for that everyone will find his corner in the Kotel. The reform people need to feel at home. And if you, me, mean the Israelis, if you make them feel not at home, you shouldn't be surprised when they take it very seriously and say, okay, so this is not my home. But if we want to do it differently, something needs to be different. And we should be very careful with the Israelis. We should be very careful about the price, about the next generation who become more and more, באמת, לא אכפת. They just care about that. And it's the Israelis' problem. It's not something that the people in states can do. It's starting here in Jerusalem.
And it's particularly powerful to hear you say that. And I say that because a couple of weeks ago on these sessions that we do on a weekly basis, I interviewed Anat Hoffman, and we talked about the whole issue of the egalitarian prayer space at the Kotel. And I received, after that session, a lot of criticism for interviewing her on the basis that, the positions were anti-Orthodox and, shouldn't be giving her a platform. So I think it's particularly important for everyone to hear that there is a diversity of opinion on these issues, not just within the reform movement or the progressive side of Judaism, but within Orthodoxy. There are those, one can have differences of opinion when it comes to ideology, and you can disagree vehemently, l'shem shamayim, but at the same time respect one's right to express themselves in the way that they feel they need to. So, Rabbi Lau, it's been an absolute pleasure to hear you, and I think particularly now in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I wish you a Gmar Chatzima Tova, and I'd love to continue this conversation, if not in Australia, in Israel, when, as you say, the world opens up. But thank you very much. And
thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for. Thank you. I want to send Birkat Chatima Tova to all people. You are באמת in our hearts, and we pray that Hashem will send bracha to all the world, and we can meet each other. Bezrat Hashem, bebracha, bebriut. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Rav Lau, thank you so much. Your message of kesher, of connections between individuals, between groups in society, and between societies has been really powerful. during this period of introspection, I hope and pray that your message of peace and understanding will be spread far and wide. So thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Shana Tova. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova and Gemach Chatima Tova.